This is the UiPath Cloud Platform. Apps is available as one of the spaces here on the left. You can just navigate to it by going to cloud.uipath.com. Now here, you see a list of apps that are already available to me. I can go ahead and run an application from here, or I can create a new app by clicking this Create New button. Let's start with that. I'm going to represent a mortgage banking specialist today, or a mortgage banking company today. And one of the things that we've seen happen quite a bit is our customers or clients asking for mortgage deferrals due to the recent events with COVID. And so I want to create an application that will allow me to present all of my client-facing teams with a tool that can quickly calculate the new mortgage schedule, as well as the remaining amount at the end of their term and so on, as well as generate a draft email that I can send to my customer. Now, I've already built the automations using Studio, and one of the other automations was built using Studio X. What I'm going to do is compose these into a nice presentation layer. So we'll call our application Mortgage Deferral and create it. Now here, it drops me into a blank canvas and gives me some tips on how I can start engaging with this tool. This is my App Studio. What I'm going to do is start by adding new controls. So actually, let me go back a little bit. On the left here, you can see a tree view of all of the controls and pages in your application. Right now, I just have a simple page, I have a layout, and I have a container. On the right, I have the properties for this container. And now I can also add controls. Since my app is blank, this is where I'll begin. We have a myriad of controls available out of the box, starting with input controls like buttons, checkboxes, text boxes, and so on. Display controls that include lists, images, labels, tables, containers, so you can build complex applications, and icons, and we have a myriad of icons as well. Now I'm going to build my simple mortgage application that accepts two pieces of input. It expects a loan number and the number of months that you want to defer the mortgage by. And then it will return the name of the customer and all of their mortgage information, as well as the ability for me to submit or to run an automation that will create an email draft. So I'll start by adding in an image because I want my app to have a nice header. And then I'll add a label for that loan number, a text box for inputting the actual loan number. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we have space to work with. Now I'm going to add one more label and a text box for a number of months to defer. And the last label and text box for my customer information. The next thing I'll do is add a table. I have an automation that returns a data table that contains all of the mortgage information, and I just want to bind that to various columns in this table and render the data in one swoop. And then last, I'll add a button that will generate that email draft. Now that's just the basics. At this point, I can start to configure each one of these controls. So the image, I want to put a little banner. So what I do is I select the image, I click on image binding, and upload an image from my computer. You can also point it to a URL. We have a URL option here as well, and it'll load the image from that URL. Here, I just add that image and bind it, and you'll see that load up. Now we'll go update the label, and we'll call it loan number. This one we'll call number of months to defer, so it's clear to the user. This one is just the customer name that's returned by my automation. And what I want to do is make this box disabled so that people cannot overwrite the customer name, because that's really just for them to read, and it's not a read-write field. And then I will also rename my button to create email. Now what we can do is go ahead and start styling this app so it looks a little bit more user-friendly. We can start by, since I'm already on the button, we have several different styling options available. Here, for buttons and labels and so on, we have out-of-the-box styles, like predefined styles that you can use. In this case, I'll just use an outline. But we also have size and margin and other styling options. For the table, I want to make this a little bit bigger. So I'll click on size there. And instead of the width being auto, I'll change it to, let's say, 90%. So you can see you can control both the percentage, so you can use relative widths or sizes, as well as fixed sizes. So I'll make the height to 350 pixels. That should cover all the information that I need to put in there. And then the last thing I'll do is style this image as well, so it's a little bit smaller. So same thing here, I can change this to 450 pixels, and now it will stay that size no matter how big or small the application gets. Now at this point, my application, or the bare bones of it, are ready. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. You can also center text. So I can make this application centered. I can move this a little bit more to the middle of the page, so it looks a little bit more professional. Now, the last thing remaining for me to do is bind all of these various controls to data. So I start by adding my automations to this project. I click on this plus, add process. And here you can choose orchestrators that are available in your cloud platform, or you can choose an orchestrator on premises and connect to it here. In my case, this is I have automations in the cloud, so I'll just choose my tenant. Click next. And here it loads all of my automations that are available in various folders in that product team tenant that I just chose. Now I want two automations. I want this mortgage deferral summary, which creates an email. And I want this mortgage deferral calculator, which shows me all of the input parameters. So I have loan number and months deferred. And then I have a bunch of output parameters as well. I'm not planning to use them all in this automation, but they're available to me. And it also tells you the types of these parameters. So I've got my loan status and deferred loan status and so on. I select this, and now it'll go add those processes to my project. And I can see the list of parameters right there. That one doesn't have any. And I can see the results here as well. Now you have to run this automation once for apps to recognize the input and output arguments before they show up in here. Now I can go ahead and start binding the various components of my app to the inputs and outputs of those automations I uploaded. We'll start by binding the customer name. So you click on General, and here you have a value binding field. You can drag and drop the information from these automations. And here, in this case, I'll put customer name. For the column, for the table, I can bind it to a data table. So here I have two data tables. I'm going to use that current loan status data table. And, oh, there we go. My apologies. So let's delete that and we'll start over. I'll use that current loan status data table. And then I can go ahead and start adding columns to it. So the first column is the current mortgage information, and it automatically names that column. The second thing I want to do is point it to that column 1. I don't really need it to have a name, so I'm just going to delete that text there. So it'll show the mortgage information or the label and the information right there. Now that sets up my table. You also have selected value binding. So if you click on one of the rows here, you can bind it to a local variable and then use that data in the rest of the application or pass it back to another automation. Now that gets the binding done. The next couple of things I need to do is when they enter the number of months to defer, I want to trigger that automation to go do the calculations. So for that, I click on that box and we have events. And let's actually rename this text box to months. And we'll rename the loan number text box as well, so it's easier to find later. There we go. Now we click on this number of months to defer and we add an event. We'll create a rule here. We have several rules available. You can do complex logic like if then else statements. You can open pages, URLs, and I'll show you how some of these others work as well. You can also create pop-ups, or you can set values. So you can change values in various fields. What I want to start by is starting this process, which is my mortgage deferral calculator process. So as soon as they enter that text, the loan number and the number of months to defer, it'll run this automation. Now, I want to run it attended because I'm on my machine right now. That's what I want to do. And I want to specify input overrides. So I want to provide my automation with the loan number as well as the number of months deferred. Now, you assign the loan number to it, and then we can add the values. And the values we want to add are coming from that text control. So we have our loan number control. We just select the value from there. And I want to add the months deferred. And we select a value for that number of months to defer, the months text box value. Perfect. Now, once that automation starts, I also want to let users know that something is happening because it could take a few seconds for it to run. And so I can show a spinner that just says calculating. And that way, they're not wondering whether the app ran or not. And then when that application is complete, or when that automation is complete, we want to just hide that spinner. Now that first part of my automation is done. The next thing I want to do is go back and automate this create email action. So when on that button, on click of that button, I want to create another rule, which is start that next process of mortgage deferral summary. And in this case, when it's done, I just want to let them know that the draft was created. So I can, on the completed state, I can show a message. It says, there we go. And you can choose the position of where it appears on the top or bottom. And you can either choose to auto dismiss it or leave it there. We'll set it to 10 seconds just so we can actually see it. And at this point, my application is ready to go. I can preview it so it's available to me, or I can publish it. And I can decide when I publish whether I want it to be available to the entire organization. So if I go back to this main page, you can see whether the app should be available to all users of the organization or to specific users. And eventually we'll add the ability to share it with groups of users as well. In this case, I just published my app. So let's go back to App Studio. And here you can see that app has appeared. Now I can run it from here. And it should load and look just like we designed. There we go. I can add the loan number. I can add the number of months to defer. And there, the automation starts to run. Now, I could have also hidden that current mortgage table and unhidden it when the automation was done running. So you have a lot of levers that you can play with when designing these applications. And you saw my automation finish running, and there it shows you the loan amount and all of that. So it's really, really easy to get data from various systems and just push it into your application. Now I can click this create email button, and that next automation would start to run, and I'll open UiPath Assistant. You see that mortgage deferral summary job is starting to run. There we go. It's taking this Word template that I have, filling it in with information from Excel, and it also generates a password that then gets added to my draft email. Now let's go back to my app. just that. While that's loading, let's go back to my Outlook drafts folder. And here you can see that new mortgage deferral email was generated. And you'll notice that new password right there is consistent with the password that was generated on this website. So with within just like 5 to 10 minutes, I've created a very simple and straightforward application, but you can get a sense of the power of UiPath Apps from this demo.